Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Let's look into the first question. Consider the following statements with respect to International Atomic Energy Agency. It is headquartered in Vienna, Austria. India is a founding member of the IAEA. RATS is a network for providing international assistance upon request from a member state following a nuclear or radiological incident or emergency. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are the specialized agencies of the United Nations? Food and Agriculture Organization, International Atomic Energy Agency, International Telecommunication Union, World Health Organization, World Meteorological Organization. The answer to this is 1, 3, 4 and 5 only. Why have we taken both these practice questions? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Let us try and understand what are these options. When we look into the first option, yes, the International Atomic Energy Agency is headquartered in Vienna. So the first statement is right. When we look into the second statement, yes, India is a founding member of the IAEA. This statement is also right, but the third statement is wrong. Why? Because when we speak about RATS, RATS is nothing but Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure. So the Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure is part of SCO and it is not part of International Atomic Energy Agency. So what is part of International Atomic Energy? We have one of the agencies which is called as Response and Assistance Network. So remember, Response and Assistance Network is part of the International Atomic Energy Agency. So what is this Response and Assistance Network? As the very name denotes, we have response from this particular organization. It also provides assistance to many other countries and there is a network that is built through this particular agency. What do we mean by it? Let's say for example, there is one of the countries. This country has nuclear missiles or they can also have nuclear energy where power generation unit may also be present as well. So what would happen? Let's say there is an emergency or let's say there is an urgency or there is a leak of the nuclear energy or the power, radiation start emitting. In that case, there are network of countries on this very platform who are trained, who are also equipped, they also have qualified personnel as well. Such countries will send it to their neighboring countries or to another country so that this can be ultimately brought to an end. So in case there is radiation emergency, so a country which is trained assisting another country which is in need of the help is what is called as response and assistance network. So basically what we have to respond is to a radiation emergency and assistance will be provided by another country to a country which is in need of that particular help. So basically what would happen? They will detect, locate, identify and ultimately characterize what is this radioactive material all about, assess and evaluate the consequences of this particular emergency. They also ensure that technical advice will also be provided and ultimately they will stabilize this entire process. So as part of IAEA, what we have is Response and Assistance Network RANET and it is not RATS. Since we are speaking about RATS, which is part of SEO and not part of IAEA, the third option is wrong. So the answer to this would be 1 and 2 only. Now when you look into the second part of the question, which of the following are specialized agencies of the United Nations? We have Food and Agriculture Organization, International Telecommunication Union, World Health Organization and Meteorological Organization, which are specialized agencies of the United Nations. But the IAEA is not a specialized agency, but instead it has related functionalities and it is called as the related organization. What do we understand by this? Let me give you an example. Let's say for example, there are number of functions which cannot be discussed in the United Nations General Assembly. These functions cannot be discussed on the United Nations General Assembly because it can be complex in itself or it can be technical in nature. As a result, they would not be able to discuss on the United Nations General Council. So what we require is an organization which is able to act autonomous, which is able to act independently, but it also has to coordinate with the United Nations. So what is the specialized agency? It is that agency which is independent, autonomous international organization which works with the United Nations, and this relationship is created by entering into an agreement with such a specialized agency. So we have IAEA, which is considered as a related organization by the United Nations and not a specialized agency of the UN. Which are the specialized agencies of the UN? We have the Food and the Agriculture Organization, Civil Aviation Organization, International Fund for Agriculture Development, International Labour Organization, International Maritime Organization, International Monetary Fund, ITU, UNESCO, United Nations Industrial Developmental Organization, Universal Postal Union, World Bank Group, World Health Organization, World Intellectual Property Organization, World Meteorological Organization, and World Tourism Organization. These are the special agencies, but there are related organizations where we have the International Atomic Energy Agency. So the answer to this would be 1, 3, 4, and 5. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which amongst the following statements is the best description of doctrine of eminent domain? It is a doctrine whereby a party may be barred from raising a claim due to an unreasonable delay in pursuing the claim. It holds that a larger and greater body should not exercise functions which can be carried out efficiently by smaller and lesser body. The purpose of this doctrine is to determine under which head of power or field, that is, under which list a given piece of legislation falls. It is the right of the central or the state government to acquire private property for public purposes. Which of the statements is the best description of the doctrine of eminent domain? The answer to this is, it is the right of the central or the state government to acquire private property for the public purpose. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here is speaking about land acquisition, which is one of the principles under the doctrine of eminent domain. So what is this doctrine of eminent domain? Let's say we have the central government, or we also have the state government as well. The central government or the state governments want to come up with a public purpose which requires the land. So what can they do? They go to a private party, seek for this particular land, acquire this particular land, pay them a certain amount of money. Such a principle is what is called as doctrine of eminent domain. So in the doctrine of eminent domain, the government would be able to acquire a private property for a public use. So after paying due compensation, it can be taken up for the public purpose, which is called as doctrine of eminent domain. One of the law that is drafted as part of the doctrine of eminent domain is Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act of 2013. Then the first statement says it is a doctrine whereby a party may be barred from raising a claim due to an unreasonable delay in pursuing the claim. This happens to be the doctrine of laches. Then we have the principle of subsidiarity, which says it holds that a larger and a greater body should not exercise functions which can be carried out efficiently by smaller and lesser body, which is nothing but the principle of subsidiarity. So in the principle of subsidiarity, if the central government is working on some of the projects or the schemes or mechanisms which can be done by the local bodies, such power should be given to the local bodies and should not be administered at the central level. Now let's look into the next practice question. The term base erosion and profit sharing, often seen in news, is related to mining operation by multinational companies in resource rich but backward areas, curbing of tax evasion by multinational companies, exploitation of genetic resources of a country by multinational companies, lack of consideration of environmental costs in the planning and implementation of developmental projects. Which of the statements are right? When it comes to the base erosion and profit sharing, what we have is the curbing of the tax evasion by the multinational companies. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the base erosion and profit sharing. What is this principle of base erosion and profit sharing? As the very name denotes, base erosion and profit shifting. What do we understand by this? When we have a multinational company which not just operates in one country, but they operate in multiple countries. So let's say in United States of America, the taxation for a multinational companies tax is imposed at about 30%. So what do these multinational companies do? They immediately move to a different country where the tax would be comparatively less. So what do? They move from United States of America, they operate in Panama Islands, and thereby what do? They limit the tax imposed on that particular company. So during this particular process, there is base erosion, as this company, which is based out of United States of America, is not paying the taxes. Instead, it is saving on the taxes by operating in another country, whereby it is shifting its profits, and ultimately there is base erosion of the taxes. So when it comes to the base erosion and profit shifting, this is seen generally in reference to the OECD, whereby they want to prevent the curbing of this tax shifting or profit shifting from one country to another. So the second option, which is curbing the tax evasion by multinational companies, is the second option, right, for the base erosion and profit shifting. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to the casual workers employed in India, consider the following statements. All casual workers are entitled for employee provident fund coverage. All casual workers are entitled for regular working hours and overtime payment. The government can, by a notification, specify that an establishment or industry shall pay wages only through its bank account. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2021. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is SWIFT. What is SWIFT? Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Why is it in context? That is because recently we had the Russia and Ukraine crisis. Because Russia was the aggressor, it continued with the war without going through the diplomatic channels. We have countries like United States of America, many countries from Europe, and several other Western countries have now decided that Russia should be excluded from this particular organization or the institute. So let us try and understand what is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. This is a very important one when it comes to preliminary as well as the mains examination. What happens? SWIFT is nothing but a messaging network. What would happen? An infrastructure would be developed by SWIFT whereby money can be transacted from one part of the country to another, from one country into another, making use of this network. So basically we require a safe network. So that safe network for the transaction from one company to another, one banking channel to another, from one institution to another, will be provided by the SWIFT. So remember, SWIFT is just a platform for sending the messages. It does not hold any security, it does not hold money, but it provides a reliable communication method so that transaction can be facilitated, and ultimately there will be safe transfer of funds from one banking institution to another banking institution. How would it work? Let's say, for example, there is a bank. This bank can be a city bank which is placed in New York. There is another bank, let's say HSBC, which is in London. So the city bank, a person from Citibank has to send his money to another person who's present in HSBC. So what would happen? There would be a 8-digit code. This 8-digit code is a banking code that is given to each of the institutions which are part of the SWIFT. So basically, when a person from Citi has to send amount to HSBC, the same code will have to be given so that there is safe transfer of money from the Citi to the HSBC. So what would happen? Each participant on the platform would be given a 8-digit SWIFT code or a bank identification code. Similarly, SBI can be given a bank identification code. Let's say ICICI Bank is also given an identification code. So the minute this identification code is given, money can be transferred. So SWIFT is acting as a platform. It does not hold any security or the money. Since it is one of the platforms where many institutions from across the world are part of this particular system, transactions become more easy and it is also effective as well. But now, why is Russia being eliminated? That is because it was the aggressor. And what would be the concerns? Since Russia would be out of the SWIFT process. It can continue its transactions outside this particular window, but it can also be costly as well. And at the same time, if people have to send money, let's say from Russia to a different country, they would not be able to do so because they are not part of this particular SWIFT transaction system. They can do it in another way, but right now the transaction cost may also increase, and other ways and looking for alternative means might also become a cumbersome process. Earlier, it was also imposed on Iranian banks as well. How is the SWIFT organization governed? It has about 3,500 firms across the globe. Elect the 25-member board, which is responsible for oversight and management of the company. It is regulated by G10 central banks of Belgium, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Netherlands, United Kingdom, United States, Switzerland, and Sweden. Where is it headquartered? It is headquartered in Belgium. So remember, these can be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. And also remember, it is just acting as a platform. It does not have security or the money of the banks. It is just acting as a means for the communication so that there is safe transaction of the money. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.